Story 1. Photos of the dead. In the summer I was out of town for several days. Returning home, I noticed that the mailbox was filled to the brim with letters. There were about 30 of them there. Letters without a return address. Some of them heavy and damp to the touch, as if they had been in water or, rather, filled with liquid from the inside. All the envelopes had my name and address on them, and for some reason most of them were crookedly scribbled across the envelope in red ink. The letters smelled disgustingly of rotting meat and rotting garbage. I didn't really want to take them home, but curiosity turned out to be stronger than disgust. I somehow managed to take the letters into the house and unloaded them into the kitchen sink, so that the whole apartment would not smell of this abomination. I pulled out the least crude and more or less neatly formatted letter from the pile and opened it. Inside were photographs. Photographs of complete strangers to me with gouged out eyes, knocked out teeth, mouths stretched into a crazy smile, and ripped open throats. What I saw made me feel bad. I didn't even want to think about what was in the other envelopes. I feverishly opened letter after letter, and gradually a huge pile of photographs of brutally murdered people accumulated in my hands. Bodies with severed limbs, dissected corpses lying on operating tables with cut-out organs, hanged people with gutted entrails, bleeding. On some raw letters traces of blood and dirt were visible. In one photograph I saw a vaguely familiar person, and the more letters I opened, the more often familiar faces flashed in the pictures. I saw some people at work, some I went to school with. In the last envelopes, I found photographs with the mutilated bodies of my close friends and relatives. And so, when I held the last letter in my hands, I was paralyzed by a guess as to its contents, but I no longer had a choice. I opened the envelope and recognized myself in the photograph that fell out. Unlike the other envelopes, I was alive in the picture. My eyes were intact. My arms and legs were also in place. But, coldly, I realized that the photo had been taken at the entrance to my house. Just before I picked up my disgusting mail, I heard footsteps behind me. Story 2. The Thing in the Pantry. Lena and Misha had been living together for the second year. They were engaged. They were already planning a wedding, which they kept postponing. Misha worked as an accountant in a little-known company. Lena was a student, studying by correspondence, and did not work. Nothing paranormal or unexplained has ever happened to them. In their new apartment, there were no evil brownies or restless souls who did not like the current owners. The couple was crazy about their new home. The house itself was a 3-room apartment with a large living room and 2 small bedrooms. Next to the kitchen, there was a pale blue door that led to the pantry. The rest of the doors in the apartment were repainted white. On Saturday morning, the girl, as usual, was preparing breakfast, quietly humming some simple melody that she composed on her own. Her fiancé, meanwhile, was killing time watching TV. He switched channels, looking at the screen skeptically. He became bored. He gave up and ended up sitting around doing nothing. Suddenly he remembered that last night, one of the 2 light bulbs in the bedroom had burned out, and decided to replace it. Since there was nothing to do anyway, the storage room was completely filled with all sorts of necessary and unnecessary junk. Spare door handles, a supply of matches and candles, old things. All this rubbish was carefully stored in a small room behind the blue door and was carefully sorted into different boxes, chests, cabinets, and shelves. The light bulbs were in an iron box with sharp corners, and the box itself stood, one might say, directly opposite the door. Being clumsy, Mitchell immediately tripped right on the threshold of the storage room and flew down with a roar. "Misha, why are you rowdy there? Everything is fine." Lena laughed, looking out from the kitchen. The door to the pantry was already locked. "Yes, I'm completely fine," Misha answered her. "I just tripped and fell." The guy walked into the kitchen and smiled awkwardly. "I wanted to change the light bulb in the room." "Then go change it. The girl snorted and turned away, continuing to cook. On Monday morning, Mikhail got up early. Lena was still sleeping. The groom did not wake her. Sometime later, when the guy was no longer there, Lena woke up and went to the store to do some shopping. The street was clear and fresh. Despite the impassable white snowdrifts, it was pleasant to walk along the road. On the way back, Lena realized that she had forgotten the keys to the apartment. The apartment door was locked automatically. It was impossible to open it without keys or tools. Plus, as luck would have it, she forgot her phone. Relations with the neighbors were neutral, but Lena did not want to disturb them. Therefore, having gone up to her last floor, she obediently waited for the groom at the door. It was getting dark. Mikhail never showed up. The girl despaired, and, not understanding the meaning of her actions, pressed the bell of an empty apartment. After the bird trill, a click was heard and the door opened. The girl entered the room, closed the door behind her, and tiredly threw the bags on the floor. The guy carefully picked them up and took them to the kitchen. We won't describe their heated discussion about the fact that the guy was at home all this time, and Lena was freezing in the entrance. It was late evening. The couple was watching a movie on TV. Suddenly something caught the girl's attention. By the way, Mish, what? Can you smell it? She got up from the sofa and looked around the room. No. What does it smell like? Lena, without answering the guy, left the room and headed towards the kitchen. The closer she came to her, the stronger the smell, unpleasant and nauseating. The blue door was ajar. Lena couldn't even scream, having hit his head on the corner of an iron box. Mikhail lay dead in the closet for the second day. Darling, did something happen? A voice was heard from behind. There was nowhere to run. Story 3. Someday, he will come for us too. I live with my uncle. My parents died in a car accident, and my name is Austin. I have only one brother, a twin, Dustin. We are only 13 years old. We love all sorts of mystical stories, especially being participants. We get together in a small group of guys and go to all sorts of paranormal places. The adrenaline is just pumping. Well, we were about to go to another abandoned area. This time it was a school. It was closed for unknown reasons in 1897, and until now no one had gone there. Well, we decided to pluck up the courage and go there. It seemed to me that it would be terribly interesting and fun, but I was wrong. When we entered there, Dustin and I began to tremble, but we did not retreat and moved on. There were regular classrooms, the director's office, and a toilet. There were only 5 boys, but it seemed to me that a 6th one was present. I became scared. Suddenly we heard water running from the tap, although the water had been turned off a long time ago. Friends went to see what was there, but Dustin and I stayed where we were. We waited for 5 minutes, but then we heard cries for help. We rushed to our friends, but when we arrived they stood with such expressions on their faces that it was as if nothing had happened. What happened here? Said Dustin. We heard screams, I say. Friends said that there was nothing, and it seemed to us. Well, we didn't pay attention to it and walked further along the corridors. It's probably time for you to go home. Your mom just called me, said one of my friends. I broke out in a cold sweat. I looked at Dustin, he turned pale, and without hesitation, we ran to the exit. They stood just as motionless, with cold eyes watching us move away. If you're wondering why we got scared, as I said, my parents died in a car accident, and my friends knew about it and tried not to even remind us of it because it was already hard for us. Soon, 3 corpses were found in an abandoned school. Our friends with Dustin, what it was or who it was is unknown. The case is closed, and we have forgotten what it's like to walk through abandoned places. We dream about him, and I'm afraid that someday he will come for us.